I am going to tie a couple flies. They're lingcod flies. They're good flies. I won't talk a whole lot about them, but I'm going to talk about how we fish for lingcod. And I hope you get something fun out of this. Thanks for joining me. So here we go. We're talking about lingcod flies. So when we're fishing for lingcod out of these dories in Pacific City, it's a lot of fun. Now we have our best fishing, fly fishing, I would say, in the spring. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is this. In the spring, these fish move onshore to spawn. And so in the summer and probably the winter, although I'm not sure because I'm not out there in the winter, they may be in, they are often 100 feet of water, 120 feet of water. And you can catch them on a fly in water that deep, but it is a struggle. Why is it a struggle? It's a struggle. You can, if you've got no wind, at all, your fly line, like a 700 grain fly line, or 30 feet of T20, it'll sink. It'll get you down to the bottom, but the problem is you got no tension, you got no contact. By the way, this fly here is going to be kind of, I consider it an octopus fly or a squid fly. I would not claim that that's what the lingcod think it is. But anyway, so you get your fly line down. You get it down 100 feet, 120 feet. You have no idea what it's doing down there. You can't feel it. All you can feel is the weight of that line. So if you jig your rod up and down, you might think you have a tight connection, but you don't, because that all you're doing is you're moving your fly line, and there will be, I guarantee there's slack at the end of your line, at the end of your fly. How do I know this? Well, because I've fished that way, and I've thought I was in contact with my fly, but I wouldn't feel anything. Then I'd reel my fly in to check it, make sure everything was good, and the material, this was a Steve Farrar's blend, Clouser, the material was just wadded up in a ball. By the way, that flash is Ripple Ice Fiber, really nice stuff. And this is Chocolate's Filler Flash. It's brown. Anyway, so my Clouser, the synthetic hair, was just totally wrapped up in a ball, which meant that fly had been in a lingcod's mouth, and it had been chewing on it and spit it, and I never had a clue. So you're kind of wasting your time if you're in 100 feet of water. Now, when I have caught fish in 100 feet of water, it's because I've gotten hung up, and then I pull, and my fly comes free, and instead of stripping in to check my hook, I keep that same amount of line out. So in other words, you get hung up, you don't reel in at all from when you got hung. You just pull your hook free. And so here's the deal, your line was straight to, it was tight to your fly. So you know you're exactly the right depth. And then you just let your fly hang there, because the movement of any movement of the boat is going to cause that fly to go up and down. So that's what you're doing. And then you get bit. And you almost always get bit. But but the problem is when you get hung up, you don't always get unhung up. That is the problem. So in the spring, by the way, this is a craft fur brush, brown and tan. I might even go behind there. I don't know why. Nah, I won't do that. Brown and tan craft fur brush. So you're in the spring, like when? So right now, if we could get out there, but we can't because it's too rough. But February, March, April, May, sometimes into June, but I'd say it's more like March and April. If we can get out, it can be so good because the lingcod have moved in, and they're more like 30 feet of water, 40 feet of water. Some of the reefs are 50 feet deep, and they are highly accessible there, and you can feel what your fly is doing. It's not perfect. And you don't have too much up and down jig. You want to keep that up and down jigging action a little bit slower when you're fly fishing, so you do have contact. Because if you lift up real fast and then you drop your rod real fast, what's going to happen is that you're going to create slack. Your fly is going to come up, and it's going to slowly go back down. And when it's slowly going back down, that lingcod bites. You better hope that lingcod hangs on. Because if it doesn't hang on, it's going to chew your fly and spit it, and you'll never know it. So that's 30 to 40 feet. Now, what kind of fly lines do we use? I'm real partial to the I have a line made by both Rio and Airflow, and it's in Rio it's the custom cut outbound T14. In Airflow it's I think they call it the custom cut sniper. It's about 35 feet of T14 integrated line. Sinks quite nicely. If you'd prefer, you could use 20 feet of T20 or T17 would be fine. And another option would be like a teeny line or an Airflow big game, anywhere from 500 to 700 grains. I'm not sure that you really, this is a great looking fly. It really is. I don't put a lot of flash in there because the octopus, you've got some flash. I put a little bit of flash in the tail, and this body is flashy, but those octopus, sometimes they're actually this long, this long. So this is a bit on the small side, but they'll take these smaller flies just fine. So anyway, where was I? We're down there. So sometimes if there's a little bit of current, I'm looking for the groove here. If there's a little bit of current, you can back your dory just a little bit. You want to have your fly line going straight down from the boat. If it's going at much of an angle at all, what that means, the other thing is hello, watch your fish finder, your depth sounder. You want to know how deep it is, and you need to know how much line you've got out. So let's say that you're fishing over a reef that's 50 feet deep. Let's say I'll lose track of what I'm doing. Your fly line head is 35 feet. So you want an extra 15 feet of fly line. And what I will usually do is I'll take a black Sharpie permanent marker, and I will mark like 10-foot increments on my running line. So that way I'll know. So I know how long my leader is, I'm gonna use some yak hair here. I know how long my leader is, and I know, I'm gonna use some different scissors. I know how my leader and my the sinking portion of my fly line and my running line, I know how long all those things are. So I can do the math and I can tell when I'm at the proper depth. And that's really important, because if you get too much line out, so I got a problem here. I got to cut this in the middle. By the way, these are great big eyes. These great big eyes help get your fly down. But if you've got too much line out, your fly line will be laying on the bottom and you won't even know it. Okay, now you can see a little bit more of this creature. The point is, it's no earthly good for you to have your fly laying on the bottom, because you'll be working your fly line up and down. You'll be pumping your rod. You're feeling like, wow, I'm doing a great job of fishing, but you're not. You're just moving your fly line up and down in the water, and your fly is down there just laying on the bottom, and these fish are not going to eat it if it's laying on the bottom. I guarantee it. So this by the way, this is just a big old generic clouser, and I like the yak hair because it's very nice and firm, nice firm material. So you say you're 40 feet deep, 50 feet deep. Get your fly down there and work it and work it and work it, because they do like that action. Now the other thing is that sometimes you'll be working your fly and working it and you're not getting any grabs, so you start to reel it up, and halfway to the surface the lingcod will grab your fly. So here's the deal. Sometimes they've followed it from the bottom, but sometimes those pesky lingcod, and you should be able to notice this on your fish finder, you'll be marking some fish on the fish finder that aren't on the bottom. You think, oh, those are black rockfish up suspended off the bottom, but they're actually not. Sometimes the lingcod will be suspended, black yak hair. The lingcod will actually be suspended. They'll be feeding on schools of bait fish, and we've had this happen where we thought we had to get right to the bottom to get the lingcod. Turns out you actually wanted to be mid-depth, so the water was 60 feet deep. The lingcod were more abundant 30 feet down than they were right on the bottom. Now that's not your usual situation, but it's something to keep in mind. So when these fish grab your fly, there's no thinking about it. Lingcod, they really fight quite a bit different than black rockfish. Black rockfish have more wiggle to them. The lingcod sometimes will come up to the boat, maybe even somewhat close to the surface, and then they will run right back down. And you know that the rockfish can't do that. Rockfish, you'll feel more tail action, more rod thumping. The lingcod is more of a steady pull, and like I say, sometimes they come right up to the surface and then they will run you right back down. And that's where you want it. If you can get them up, and if you can keep from letting them get all the way back down there, that's a real good idea, because what they'll do is they'll get you down there and they will, we call it rocking you. They will get into a crevice, something. They'll get into something, and you often won't get it. So sometimes if they get hung up down there You just let them, give them slack, and sometimes they will come out, swim around, and you can catch them off balance again, and you'll get them. Big flies versus small flies. We all like to fish big flies for lingcod, and we keep thinking, oh yeah, that's big fish, and sometimes they like a big fly, but they will very well take a smaller fly. I've had situations where I've been fishing a clouser like this, and I'll hook a black rockfish on this. It's when I'm fishing two flies at the same time, and hook a rockfish on this, and my other fly happens to be, I'm going to taper this just a little bit. My other fly happens to be like a little crab pattern or a shrimp pattern, and sometimes I wind up catching the lingcod on the smaller fly. This fly is mostly going to sink as a consequence of the fly line, and the other fly I'm using is going to be weighted more heavy. This is going to be a second fly. So what do I think about fishing two flies? It's fun, but it carries risks, because sometimes the second fly will get fouled in the bigger fish and they'll break you off. Sometimes it's okay if you've got, you know, a 15-pound lingcod, 20-pound lingcod, and then a bass. But if you got two 15-pounders, they can just kind of tear your leader apart at the knot, because they never pull. They never pull the same direction. The thing about fishing two flies is you probably shouldn't do it, because there's too much danger, too much risk involved, that one fly is going to get, a big fish will eat one of the flies, and then the other fly will get fouled in the fish somewhere while it's swimming and wiggling around, and when that happens, you wind up coming out the loser in the battle. Yep, that's pretty much what happens, is you're going to lose. But still, it is just appealing, because you get that one fly down, you get those two flies down there, and you feel a fish climb on. Instead of racing them up to the surface, you just let him swim around a little bit. And it's kind of cool to think about it, because that fish is dragging your fly around, making a great presentation, and you know that there's other fish following it and intrigued with it. And then you feel another one climb on, and I fished 3 flies, and that's even more fun to do that. And when you're if you can come up with 2 bass and a modest-sized lingcod, you're in business. But when you get a couple good-sized lingcod, and it's just a mess. It doesn't work out. But it's so much fun. So anyway, this fly here is going to be a lot smaller. I used no different. Oh, what kind of leaders do we use for lingcod? Very good question. And it's a tough one. A 20-pound is probably a pretty good idea. You start talking 25-pound, and it's actually, there are some drawbacks to using 25-pound, because you're gonna get hung up. I guarantee it. You're gonna get hung up. And when you do, you got to break. And it is not easy. It's tough to break. I don't even like to do it. With your fly line just stretches and stretches and stretches. puts a lot of strain on your fly line, which is not a good idea. So I far prefer to use something like no more than 20 pound, even 20 pound, like 20 pound chameleon or 20 pound ultra green. That is really tough stuff, and you're gonna have a hard time breaking it. Now 15 is actually much nicer stuff to use, but then you can't quite, if you hook a big lingcod, you can't pull as hard on him. You can't pull as hard to keep that bigger lingcod out of the rocks and safe. So that's my dilemma. I'd rather fish 15 for when I get hung up, but then I'd rather have 20 when I do hook. Now, how big are lingcod? Realistically, they're not that big. 10 pounds. I usually overestimate my fish weights anyway. I think we've caught a few that are in the 25. But lingcod is mostly head and then a tapering body, and to really get a 25 pound lingcod these days is really saying something. Have I caught? Yeah, I caught one. I think my buddy said it was 35, but I don't know if they were just being nice to me or not. That's quite possible. But they taste great and they're a lot of fun, and spring is a time to get them. How long a leader? Oh, I'd probably use a 3-foot leader is all you need. 3 foot's gonna be plenty of leader. What else have I got here? Let's tie another fly. What have I forgotten to mention? We got fly. Sure, rod weight. I've fished an 8 weight boost. I fished 10 weights. I fished 12 weights. If you fish an 8 weight, it'd better be a really tough one. Better be tough as nails. It better have a lot of power in the butt section, so you can really pull on that fish when that lingcod's trying to get back down to the bottom, and you're trying to hold him back. I like an 8 weight. I like a powerful 8 weight, because if you're catching these smallish lingcod, you really feel the wiggle, you feel the bend. I think it's and realistically, off of Pacific City, we don't catch that many great big ones. 8 weight, but I fished 12 weights too, and so there's nothing wrong with fishing a 12 weight. I fish the same line. I don't. So my line on an 8 weight or my line on a 12 weight is probably going to be it's going to be the same line. This is not are we casting? No, we're not casting. We are you just lower your fly and your fly line off the side of the boat and let it get down there, and you start fishing it. We are not casting these things, which is probably a good idea. It's probably a good thing. So we got a rod. Got to be a powerful rod. We got a line. We got a leader. No more than 20 pound. Hooks. What kind of hooks? These right here. These are Umpqua jig, 60-degree jig hooks. Hook's not critical. I like any kind of saltwater hook. You can use freshwater hook. Your hooks aren't going to last long. You're going to beat them up, and they're going to get. Now, if you use an 811S or a Gamakatsu SC15, they're not going to get rusty, but you're going to lose that fly. You think this fly is going to catch a lingcod? I guarantee it will. have no idea what the lingcod, they're not always real picky. It's important to get something down to them. Get it in the zone. So where was I? Oh, size. Oh, okay, I think I've talked about fish fly size before. You should try some different fly size, because sometimes they'll take a fly of this size better than they will take a bigger fly. Now I'll tell you, sometimes they're, you know, you'll catch a lingcod and they'll puke up a bunch of little octopus. And I tie flies that I think are going to look like an octopus, and I catch lingcod, but I don't really know. Really don't know. I try to avoid making claims, because people catch lingcod on a bare piece of lead that they just thump up and down on the bottom. So 8 weight, 400 to 5 to 700 grain line, 20-pound test, 3-foot leader. Keep contact, measure your fly line, keep your fly in the zone. Make sure your fly isn't just sitting there on the bottom. Try to get them up away from the bottom as quick as you can. I think that's it. Oh, and by the way, if you're on a reef and you're not getting lingcod action right away, you should move on, because you'll get something very, very quickly, or you're in the wrong place. Oh, and hitchhikers. So a hitchhiker, when you hook a bass and you're reeling your bass up and your bass comes up and all of a sudden it gets real heavy, that's a hitchhiker. That's a lingcod has your bass. And it turns out hitchhikers don't fight nearly as well. When they've got a 3-pound bass in their mouth, they're just kind of hanging on. So you'll see. I think I'm going to call it quits at that. I hope you found something of interest here. I hope you get a chance to get out and fish for a lingcod. Yeah. Yeah, now this fish rocked me. Oh, he's off though.